not just sitting. We're not sitting on it. We're trying to find the best way forward, the best way that's the best solution for everyone involved.
Sure, because it is a divided issue.
Yes, it is. It is. It really is. And Rob has done a fantastic job for us. And I've heard many people, not just staff, but in the community, say that he's been the best city manager we've had up to now. And his current contract does not have a residency requirement. So having said that, we want, one of the options is to give him a pass on it right now and impose the requirement on the next city manager, give him a waiver basically. But we don't even know for sure that if we impose it on our next city manager, if that's enforceable in a court. And that is the dilemma that we are facing right now, that there are some council people and citizens who say fire him and just get it done with. Well, that is a simplistic approach to it, and it's really legally far more complicated than that. But we are trying to do it in a smart way. So hopefully it won't be that much longer before we can get agreement among council as to what way we're going to go forward. Sure. And the agreement has to be with Rob too, because if we can come up with an agreement that between the city and him, then it's going to be more conducive for everyone involved.
And
less costly.
When it comes to government, I like to take the person out of it and ask, if it's just the position, how would you stand? Would you want a city manager to be a Huber Heights resident, or does it matter to you?
I think it's always best if they live in the city. But I'm more concerned of having someone who can do the best job. And when I was explaining to you my position, it was not with respect to Rob. I just injected Rob at the end.
Okay.
That because of the legalities. But I would prefer that they live here. But if we can't find someone local who has the absolute best qualifications, then I don't want to pick somebody just because they fulfill a residency requirement. I understand that that's our charter, but by doing so, we are grossly limiting ourselves.
Okay.
But that's really all I can say. I would love for them to live here.
Sure.
And the charter says that they must live here. So if that is enforceable by the courts, then that's what, when we hire a new city manager, then that's what I'll stand by, because I will do what the citizens want us to do. That is my job on the council. And so it has to be done legally. It truly does. And just because we changed our charter, the Supreme Court supersedes it. And until we can get a higher court ruling that changes that position, then we have to abide by it.
Do you think that the council will come together before the year end, or do you think it'll happen when the new council comes on? Do you have any opinion on that at all?
Oh gosh. My hope is that it gets resolved quick. This is not good for this city.
Right.
But I just
you're just one councilwoman, and you can't.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I understand. I just didn't know if you had an opinion. So.
Oh, there's no way to gauge. I
Right.
mean, there's absolutely no way to gauge. I would like to see this council come to a conclusion. This council and the city manager come to an agreement before the end of the year, because if you get a new council in there in the new year and a lot of new faces, and then you have to really educate them,
Mm-hmm.
and it's going to delay the process even further.
Right.
Because I would hate to think that they would just walk in cold and somebody tells them how to vote and they follow that lead.
Right.
I would hope that as a representative that they would do their own due diligence.
Yeah, I hope they're doing that now. I hope they've been paying attention. I hope they don't come in and not know what's going on. I don't think that's the case, but because I've talked to everyone except one, but I think they all seem like they're up on the issues. All you guys seem like you're up on the issues. You may be in a difference of opinion, but you guys, I think this, lack of a better word, crop of candidates is a good crop of candidates. So,
well, I think it is too, but there's a lot of stuff that's going on behind the scene that the public does not hear about.
That's a good point.
The part the part I'm concerned about. I'm glad that everybody is paying attention. But there's a lot of legalities, a lot of options and stuff that they don't know about, and that's my concern.
Yep, good point.
But I do hope we have it resolved before the end of the year, just for the sake of the city. We need to start a fresh year.
Yep, it's a tough, difficult issue, especially when there are people involved. The last question I have for you is I was looking ahead on the agenda for Monday. In new business, item A, there's going to be a public hearing, and this episode will air after the public hearing. But what are your thoughts on it's a zoning amendment ordinance for Chapter 1198, the radio, television, telephone towers, and antennas. What are your feelings on it? I've asked some candidates prior to this episode about the T-Mobile cell phone tower going up. What are your thoughts on that?
Yes, this is a real unfortunate situation. It did not have to go this far. It was just a matter of that the church that has the deal with T-Mobile and EcoSite did not want to put the cell tower in the back of his church, in the center of his lot. And so he put it very close to the property line of a neighboring residence. And because of the potential for the tower to fall, it would restrict them from building, theoretically, restrict them from building on about 40% of their property, building an accessory structure.
Sure.
There's nothing that legally says they can't do it, but if they, wanted to avoid any potential risk, then they couldn't build there. The city has talked to the pastor there, and he's been pretty staunch in his position. I feel like he's not really being a good neighbor.
Mm-hmm.
But this revision in the zoning that you will see on Monday is a very good change, and it will prevent a similar situation from occurring in the future. We all worked on it together. A bunch of us went to the Planning Commission meeting to make sure that we were all comfortable what the final recommendation would be. So it will not be retroactive for the current issue that's in the courts right now.
Okay.
But it will again prevent a similar situation from coming up, and we don't want to discourage phone and telecommunication companies from coming into town and providing the best coverage to our citizens. But we do want them to be mindful of the impacts to neighbors around where they do build their towers.
Definitely. Before we end the podcast, is there anything you would like to tell the folks listening about yourself, your campaign? Anything?
I do. Okay, I thought you were going to ask me about the number one issue in Huber Heights.
Oh, I go ahead. What do you think the number one issue in Huber Heights is?
Okay. I think public safety is our number one issue because it's the cornerstone of any vibrant community and affects everything, all matters in our city. And I think we need to continue our commitment to a high level of public safety to Huber Heights. Our police department has done a stellar job of keeping the impact of the drug epidemic at a lower level than most of the surrounding communities because they partner with neighboring communities and different task force. And I don't know if you know or not, but our fire division was the first in the area to carry Narcan. Mm-hmm. So they're helping to save lives. And now that we've opened our third fire station last year, we've seen a decrease in overall response time due to a better allocation of available fire and EMS personnel. And as I mentioned before, the Miami Valley Young Marines are doing a fantastic job of providing awareness of the opioid epidemic and creating a positive image for our students, our young people, and you see them everywhere. I'm so proud of them. And I've spent 8 months creating a Huber Heights Community Resource Guide that I'm distributing throughout our school system, through churches, with the different social agencies I worked with, and in the library. I'm going to put it up on social media too. And it provides information on not only help with addiction, but also income-based assistance programs, crisis and support services, help with food and clothing, community health centers, free counseling programs. And so, you know, I think with us working together as a community, the churches, the social organizations, our public safety, our schools, I think those are the reasons that even though we have a problem in Huber Heights, it's not as bad as it is in surrounding communities.
Right. Right. Is there anything else you would like to let the voters or the listeners, citizens, anything you would like to tell them before we end the podcast?
Yeah. I feel that Huber Heights is a sports-centric city, and I think you'd probably agree. And I think we should focus on upgrading our parks to make them accessible for everyone and to promote future businesses, tournaments, additional revenue, and activities in our city. And to do this, I've identified a list of potential sponsors, donors, and grants to not only upgrade our parks, but I'd like to bring in an indoor sports facility so we can bring the revenue that's currently going to other places outside of the city, like action sports, and to bring it back to our community. And this is my vision for the future of Huber Heights, and I'm willing to work hard alongside, my fellow council members and city leaders to make it a reality. And I love our city. I'm entirely dedicated to moving our city forward and making it accessible to everyone. In only 18 months, I have proven my commitment to all of our citizens, not just those in Ward 5, and have been effective in moving initiatives forward. And if elected, I'll continue to work in the best interest of our city while remaining fiscally responsible. And I invite your listeners to visit electbyrge.com if you have any more questions about who I am. And I really, really appreciate the opportunity to be on your podcast, Matt.
Thank you, Nancy. I appreciate you coming on Inspired and Admired. All right, that's going to do it for episode number 21. I would like to thank Nancy Byrge for joining me today. I would like to thank you for listening to Inspired and Admired. Thanks for listening to the Huber Heights Candidate Series. I